it is better for you. It is better for you to assume that this will be the worst case scenario and be pleasantly surprised than to be underprepared. Because we've been underprepared for these Middle Eastern wars.
Well, what would be the motivation? What would be the motivation to expose yourself that way when you could strategically take out what they need to function as a country? Why would you? What military? What general would propose exposing the troops like that without the need?
I don't know. You can't win a war without air power and ground power combined. Anson was perfect on this in the critical thinking forum a couple of weeks ago. And his essential thrust was, the American public doesn't support it, therefore we can't wage it, therefore military action is punitive at best, right? It punishes them for their killing of others at best. But if you look at what they're strategically been able to do, they've been strategically able to shut down which was open before this happened, and assumed the United States would keep it from being shut down, right? That was a very important strategic assumption that no longer exists.
I listened to a retired general the other day talk about this exact same thing. And his assessment was exactly what I articulated. You don't have to take the entire country for granted. You can take the strategic islands, you can control part of the coast, which will open straight to the Rosa, will shut all funding to the ground government down, will shut all necessary imports to the country down. You can strategically arm bridges and power stations and bring them to their knees without having to go inland. You start going inland towards Iran, you're going to suffer mass casualties. But why do it if it's not necessary?
Because if you don't do it, they're just going to attack you.
That's exactly right. They'll just attack you from the positions inland.
How are they going to attack you?
Drones, missiles,
truck bombs. Don't forget about those big, huge motherfucking truck bombs that they're hard to deploy.
A lot of stuff, drones and stuff through. We shut a bridge down, which essentially crippled their ability to move that stuff into that port city. You know, there's a lot of strategic ways this can be fought. Are they going to hit us with air power? No. They can't control the skies. Are they going to move troops towards us? If you can't control the skies and you move a convoy out of Tehran towards the coast and you got F-16s and S-22s bombing them, they're going to be decimated before they ever reach the coast. So their only operation strategically, militarily, to impede us taking that is through ballistic missiles or drones. That's it. That's the only card they got to play. They can't move troops because they can't protect the troops as they move down towards the coast. They have no air cover for the troops. Did anyone ever look at Iraq when they was trying to get out of Kuwait? They called it the killing field, where they was trying to move out of Kuwait. They had no way to protect that convoy, and our planes just come through and decimate. It'd be the same thing in Iran. Yeah, it'd be the same thing with Iran trying to move any troops down.
So international oil benchmarks, as I said, topped $100 a barrel.
They move it down, they'd have no air cover, they'd have no way to protect the troops. They'd just be massacred as they come down. Yeah, let them come down.
Now,
let them send
Iran,
the tanks,
so
let them send the troops. They'd just be massacred in a convoy. Plain and simple. They have no way to
retaliate by targeting
and they have
regional
no way
economic
other
oil
than
and electrical
drones or shoot a ballistic missile.
And we already know that they've attacked countries that have been supportive to the U.S. war effort. Now, he did an exclusive interview with Axios today, the president did, in which he acknowledged that he's considering a massive escalation of the war. He said he's considering, this is his words, quote, considering a massive attack that would be, quote, bigger than ever before. And he said he is, quote, close to making a decision to restart major combat operations. But as of now, based on what's in the public domain, which could change very quickly, of course, there's been no final order given to restart major combat operations. So he indicated in this interview that the potential military operation would eclipse the scale of previous strikes, including those conducted during Operation Epic Fury. And he claimed to the Israeli point of all this that Israel would join the operation, quote, in 2 minutes, close quote, if requested. But then he said the United States, quote, does not need anybody, close quote, to execute the strikes. He was asked to explain his rationale. And he said in this Axios interview that the Iranians, quote, haven't received enough pain yet, close quote, to force them into a diplomatic agreement. Now, as has been discussed on this stage previously, there are those who have opined that the president is miscalculating the Iranian regime, that they cannot be beaten into submission to enter into a diplomatic agreement. And adding Gary's analysis, I think it would be safe to assume that although a diplomatic agreement might end the war, might force the opening by agreement of the Strait of Hormuz, might bring gas prices down sometime before the midterm elections. The one thing that we could all say, even as we may collectively breathe a sigh of relief, and I say collectively because the polling shows that this is an extremely unpopular war, Iran's not going to hold to any agreement. So, I'm not suggesting that one ought not to be reached for the moment. Others might argue that, and they might be correct. But I'm just interjecting that history has shown that Iran cannot be trusted to hold to any agreement. So that interview, by the way, was conducted by Barak Ravid. He's like the go-to reporter. He's been breaking all these stories there in the Middle East. To the Israeli issue once again that I was talking about from my sources in Israel, and I mean it's public knowledge. So when I say my sources, maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on who I'm talking to, but they are my sources and they are in Israel, so it's accurate. But I'm not suggesting that it's exclusive information. Several Israeli cities have opened public bomb shelters in anticipation of a potential Iranian missile response. I mean, I think they've been very fortunate up till now. Excuse me, as you can tell, my voice is giving way a little bit, so that means I expect all of you to talk a lot. They've been fortunate in this latest round of nearly 2 weeks of attacks that the Iranians have not been attacking Israel, but I don't think it's because the Iranians suddenly are having good feelings for the Israelis. It's because they know that there would be a price to pay for that, and for the moment anyway, they are keeping pretty quiet in that direction. I don't think they're too concerned about Bahrain or Oman or any of the other Gulf states that have come under attack. Kuwait suddenly amassing a pan-Arab army and grabbing the Kurds along the way and marching into Iran. But they are concerned about what the Israelis might do, because they know the Israelis have the military might and they're not afraid to use it.
Gary,
In
you
spite of
know
the fact-
they don't play with the lion's tail. Yeah.
Right. In spite of the fact that anytime Israel moves to defend itself, it's a propaganda loss for the Israelis, which is unfortunate. And the greater unfortunate part about it is that that manifests itself in anti-Semitic attacks increasing against Jews around the world who have absolutely nothing to do with the decisions of the Israeli government. It's just mind-boggling. So with that, I'm going to open it up to you to comment on, it's not a question, it's a fact. Trump threatens to expand the war, oil prices are soaring. I guess the question would be, if there was room to put it up there, what next? What do you think is going to happen next? What would be a good approach by the president? Should he make good on this threat? We know that sometimes he makes these kinds of public pronouncements in the hopes that that will force the enemy to the diplomatic table. But, as we've discussed here, I've used this analogy many times. If you're a police officer and a person has a gun, and you give him a chance to put that gun down, and you say to that guy, put the gun down or I'm going to shoot. If the guy doesn't put the gun down, you better damn well shoot. So that's basically what the president is saying here. And I'm not anticipating that Iran is going to put the gun down. And so, will he shoot or not? I guess it depends on his mood at the moment, because it seems to change. I think he plays good cop and bad cop at the same time, or is trying to play good cop and bad cop. And maybe a little bit too much for one person, even the great Donald J. Trump. Alan, followed by Scott.
Yes, sir. Go take a nap. You ask everybody to talk long, so you go take a nap, because I'm gonna...
Sorry, what did you say? I kind of dozed off. Kidding!
I know, you kid a lot. Anyway, hope everybody doing good. I'm glad I see Steve on the stage, and Scott, and Marshall, and Agent, and Brent. Hopefully everybody doing good, everybody is safe and sound. Here my intakes is. First of all, Israel is not going to listen to the propaganda outside. It is our job. I hope what you said and that Catholic movement, I hope it spread like a firewall and take over everybody, because that's fall in our shoulder. We know the propaganda, we know the machine is outside, and unfortunately there are some stupid idiot. They make an excuse of action of Israel, and then they grab. They don't go after the young Jewish people. They go after 70, 80, weak and old one. That's how coward they are. And it's a shame. It's a totally shame. But anyway, that's our responsibility to support Israel as much as we can. I think, Gary, the plan is already set up. What he says he's gonna bomb the shit out of bridges and overpass and all these things, because that's the one way to block the regime half-ass army. They can come to the south, because south is the more any other place to get in. Turkey is out of question. Russia's border is out of question. Afghanistan is out of question. Afghanistan is easy to get in, but it's unfortunately geography it's got high end of mountain over there, and it's not easy to pass through. The best way is, and all the words coming out of the Iran, the stage is setting, and They are trying to save few cities, especially Ahvaz, Abadan, Khorramshahr, possible. Khuzestan is the best one. They can secure enough, and then the boots on the ground is easy. And then when the stage is set and safe, and then Reza Shah the third, he can walk in there, and I promise you, things will change matter of few seconds. And unfortunately, they have to do this, the whole scenario very carefully, because we're not dealing with the normal, government. These people, they don't hesitate to do anything unhuman by all choice. But the news is good. Most of it is very hopeful, and there are stages, there are groups, there are things is happening in Iran while this back and forth is going. Now I'm getting the picture of why they did all this stuff, because it's like a chess, and every move has to be extremely careful, because they're trying to limit the possible, uh, civilian die for nothing. They already had enough. The word is out somewhere around 130, 125,000 Iranians so far died, got shot, got executed. Execution is 10 or 12 a day, and that's the sad part of this. But anyway, it is what it is. I think the plan is coming together, and now this time we will be witness of full cooperation of Israel and United States, and sometimes the word they have to say this and that. But as it says, I beg everybody, if you see something, it's injustice, and they are hurting any Jewish people, wherever you are, stand up. Don't be don't take your phone out and start, taking the video. Be active and stop the bastard, because this is wrong. This is totally wrong. A government is do whatever they do, and then you get the individual weak one in some places which, there are stronger Islamic idiot is there. That's the whole thing is. And hopefully this regime die. The support, the money for the propaganda is gonna go away, and then we see some sort of peace prior to regime take over this great country called Iran. Back to you, sir.
Well, when it comes to attacking the infrastructure, as far as I know, and as far as what CENTCOM has been reporting after each of the strikes, the two areas where they are receiving military resupplies, there are areas that there are, like from Afghanistan, through Afghanistan, it's coming, as best as I can understand from my reading, consumer type goods to help keep the economy going. But in terms of the military, resupplying the military capabilities of Iran, as far as I can tell, there are two routes that have continued unimpeded. One directly from Pakistan, which of course is very interesting. Pakistan, a nuclear country, supposedly a quote-unquote ally of the United States. Remember, they harbored Osama bin Laden. Their government could not be trusted with the information that we were going to go in and get Osama bin Laden. So we went in and we, violated the sovereignty of that country in order to get, enemy number one on the terrorist wanted list successfully. And yet they've had a role in these so-called negotiations with Iran, I don't know how you accept their largesse when they are actually part of the operation that's filling Iran with military might. I don't see them stopping that. And the other route is the rail route that comes from China. And I've been trying to follow this on a daily basis, and those have not been impeded by these attacks. Now, maybe this is what the president has in mind when he's talking about expanding this further. For certain, these have got to be scenarios that are played out at the Pentagon, but the ultimate decider is the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief. But with your obvious intimate knowledge of the situation in Iran, Alan, why do you suspect that these tactics haven't been used, breaking off the military supplies to Iran? Wouldn't that be what you want to do?
That's the whole idea, is to hit the route which these supply is coming. Because the supply, there is no direct train, railroad all the way to China. They bring them with the ship and they go to the south because they have the control of Persian Gulf. They have the control of that, there's no doubt about it, there's nothing hidden. They go in there, and from there they have to take it to hand of most of the army or hidden places. They don't have too many hidden places in the between the Gulf all the way to Tehran or whatever. And that's the only way. Railroad, that's the fastest way to take. They cannot take it with the semi-truck or whatever. It's too much. And then that's what they do. If they break up, there is several bridges from Gulf. If they, for instance, they're going to go to Tehran, there is several bridges. If those bridges, they get cut off, sources cannot come from north to south. The stuff from south, they cannot go to north. So that's a big interruption in between. And I think that's a big move. And there are other stages has to be set, which I'm sure they're working on it. It's not that they don't work it. And hopefully, in the past, there's another source. It's because when they made that Khomeini International Airport, there are so many places it's restricted. It's only for the government entry, go and come, and then they can bring a shitload of big plane. I don't know which country has, or US B-52. They are massive, but I don't know if China has it. The only other things is which these breaking of all these bridges. If Russia has a plan to bring things from there, which is easy because they can fill up the shitload of the ship and then go across the Caspian Sea and then come to the port, like a Pahlavi port in the north and a couple other ports. There's one in the city of Gorgon. They can come and then they can load the trucks and bring it to Tehran and, get it to the regime half-ass army. The army is a very weak, and they already know that. They already know they don't have no backup. They don't. The only thing it is, they are fighting for the money. Nobody is fighting to save them life. Nobody do, because Reza Shah III sending so many messages asking them join the people before it get too late, and they are ready to do it. But right now, as long as the regime has the control and regime bring, well, thanks God, they don't have enough money to bring the Palestinian. They don't have the money to bring Al Qaeda or Houthis from Yemen. and they put them on the street and beat the hell out of the people, or force them to get the gun and then go fight for them. This regime is almost done. This regime doesn't have anything. The only thing I think I'm afraid as one, and everybody else should be, is this a little bit of nuclear facility and nuclear power they have. If they blow up those, they're gonna infest the whole Middle East and possibly damage some other stuff. Back to
Right, I'm glad you mentioned the Caspian Sea. I did not mention it because they're indemnified from military attacks from the United States. The U.S. military is not going to attack Russian assets, bringing in military supplies via the Caspian Sea. However, I will note that there have been several occasions when Iranian Caspian Sea ports have been bombed by the Israelis. But I don't think that they've attacked the Russian ships. They have attacked the ports, but I do not believe they've attacked the ships. I think that's a line that the United States and Israel are not willing to cross, and for obvious reasons. Thank you, Alan. We'll go to Scott, followed by Marshall.
Okay, so Gary, what's the question here? I mean, I'm listening to. So I listened to Salvo. I listened to Alan articulate. I mean, so we're commenting on Trump's.
So Trump's threatening to wind the war. Is this a good tactic? If he does it, is this gonna be a positive or a negative?
No,
is he just
no.
What's going on here?
This is gonna be not good. I think this is. I mean, I think a couple things. What's the objective? Right? Is the objective regime change? Okay. I mean, I maybe we could do that with. I mean, that would seem to take a lot of troops.
Well, he claims in the interview with Axios that the objective is to bring them to the negotiating table through force.
Okay, so and part of the negotiating table, I guess, for force would be getting the nuclear dust. Okay, we get the dust very strongly. Get the dust. Yeah, so I think we would. I mean, I guess on one level, again, we've talked about this ad nauseum in this room, right? Like I have anyway. I mean, about it's just the liberal versus liberal society in a war. Liberal democracies value life and don't let their people die. Illiberal theocratic autocracies can afford to spill a lot of blood. So at what point do you bring them to their knees, right? I mean, if you're somebody that doesn't have a concern for the lives of your people, you kill tens of thousands of them when they're unruly. And they can't vote you out, I don't know that we're just going to break their back the way Trump thinks we will. Like, I don't know, or I think that's going to be much more difficult than he thinks it's going to be, right? I mean, so presumably getting them to the negotiating table, I don't know how long. I mean, what it's interesting too, just like what they could do with drones, which is so different than Iraq, right? I mean, the inexpensive nature of drones and how they can be utilized in warfare. I don't know. I think this is not going to go well. I don't imagine that. It's not thought. And this is the Haberman line for them. The book that's coming out. And did you know where it says that the only person.
What happened to your voice?
I think we're losing.
Can you hear me now?
Come back, Scott. Come back.
Can you hear me now?
Very weak. You sound muffled. Why are you muffled?
I just lost that here. Am I better now? Better now?
Not
Better
much.
now? All right, here we go.
Here you are.
Okay. So yeah, I think that according to the Haberman Swan reporting, that basically Netanyahu came in, said this will be a walk in the park. The administration, no one really challenged it except Vance. Vance was going crazy saying this is going to go badly, and Trump apparently said it's going to go great. It's going to go okay. And someone asked him, why do you say that? Because it always does. And so I think he was warned. I mean, Bibi apparently told him again, if you buy Haberman and Son, Bibi apparently told him it's going to be a walk in the park. Vance seemed like he thought it wouldn't be, and everybody else kind of went along to get along. And so I think, I think this is going to be messy, and I don't think we're going to get them to their knees anytime soon. I don't think this is going to go well. Yeah. So there you go.
Scott, my friend, do you know why they can get it right away?
What's that?
I said, do you know why we can get it right away? We can get it done real fast.
No, I don't know.
Well, we all should know. We're not just fighting Iran. We're fighting China. We're fighting Russia. We're fighting French. We're fighting. We was fighting the British, but thanks God they changed. Now these new prime minister or whoever it is, it's totally against the regime. And now you hear him now. There are other people we have to consider. That's it. Not gonna happen right away. So that's.
Hi, can I place an order for pickup?
How can I help you today, my man?
Can I get a half chicken?
Alright. Would you like with rice and beans or plantain potatoes?
French fries and plantains.
French fries and plantain. And the other for you, my man?
Can I get 2 beef empanadas?
You got it, boss.
Okay, that's it.
Your name?
John.
Awesome, John. We'll go over in 10 minutes, okay?
Okay, see you soon. Thanks.
See you soon.
What did we said, 10 or something? But still, 10 is 10. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you got to go to the negotiating table, but I think you got to negotiate with people that have some cards, right? It's not like Zelensky. He said Zelensky's got no cards. I think they've got some cards. So I don't know. I don't know what you do.
Well, the president, I think, would counter your argument by saying that's exactly what he's doing. Unfortunately, but he's not. And then you put something to the table. How do you trust anything that they do?
Exactly. Well, this is the same thing you're about in this case. And again, it's the liberal autocracy. Liberal autocracy thing. I think you can't make like, well, this will bring us to the table and bring us to the mice, so then it'll bring them to the table. I think the standards are the same. And so you can't make this what would make us talk a little bit. Thank you, Scott, for the lots of all about us.
Marshall.
Hey, Gary.
Brent followed Steve.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, sorry, I was in a rainstorm. Getting out of it. Alright.
He's out of the rainstorm, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know whether he'll escalate the war or not. It doesn't seem like there's much for us to do. I mean, I wish Anson were here to give his advice, but he's given his advice pretty much ad nauseum, which is, if you don't have the public support and you're not willing to fight and win a war, you probably shouldn't do it in the first place. That gets my mind.
Are you in the middle of the tropical storm there, Marshall?
Yes, I am on the outskirts of it.
Well, stay safe and, don't drive through any water.
I can do that.
Thank you. Brent followed by Steve.
So I think we need to start out by at least correcting some of your opening. There was an agreement that the Iranians were, or at least large consensus, were maintaining. It was called the JCPOA, and they were allowing inspections. They were at least per most reports were staying by the enrichment guidelines, etc. So to say that the Iranians won't abide by any agreement we come up with is to disregard history. And I think we should at least make that correction. I think for the current conflict, we kind of have to look at what we're actually fighting over. The MOU essentially said nothing about enrichment, said nothing about the enriched uranium, getting it out. What it was vague about was navigation of the strait. And, you know, the goalposts have shifted so much here that essentially Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz is right now open for question whether we're going to enforce freedom of navigation or whether we're going to allow them to control the strait. It's a rather sad state for strategic affairs of the U.S. The other thing, the other few things I would mention would be you know, this conflict and the fall of the regime have been prognosticated over and over again by those who have been hawkish on this conflict. The reality is, typically when you do an air campaign against a regime, you create a rally behind the flag effect. You create more sympathy for the people in charge. I think that's probably doubly true if you commit war crimes. Bombing civilian infrastructure without any relation to military forces, that is by definition a war crime unless there's a military purpose. So I'm not sure widespread bombing is going to be the answer here. I think the only really military solution is likely a ground invasion of at least the southern portion of Iran. And I don't think that's feasible. So I think we're in a very weak position.
Hey, Brent, hold on 2 seconds. Gary, your mic is left open. I don't think you intended it to be.
Thank you. I'm obviously a little bit under the weather. You don't want to hear me coughing. I appreciate you bringing it to my. So Brent, were you finished?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I think to claim that it's a mischaracterization of history is in fact a mischaracterization. Yes, there were aspects of the JCPOA that the Iranians adhered to, and when the president ripped it up, they felt unencumbered, and so all the benefits of the JCPOA that they were adhering to were suddenly dissipating. That's true. But let's not forget that in early 2018, Israeli intelligence seized a secret atomic archive from a warehouse in Tehran. And the documents prove that Iran had systematically preserved its historical nuclear weapons blueprints and engineering files. And then that resulted in an IAEA investigation. And the inspectors ended up testing these locations that the Iranians had hidden from them in violation of the JCPOA, 3 locations. And at those 3 locations, the IAEA discovered man-made uranium particles and then concluded that Iran had failed to declare the nuclear material and activities, which was a direct violation of the non-proliferation safeguards of the JCPOA. So there were structural omissions, there were lies, there was obfuscating, and I stand by my comment that they cannot be trusted to adhere to an agreement. Now, we may be better off with an agreement, and arguably the world was better off during that period of the JCPOA, but to say that they abided by the agreement, no, they didn't.
So
Yes, there were some aspects that they abided by, but that doesn't mean that they followed through on the agreement in total. And so I would like to defend my observation based on actual historic facts, Brent.
So just a quick response. If they were so out of violation of the agreement that it was showable, why did the United States do the process written out in the JCPOA to bring those violations to light? Instead, what we did is we removed ourselves, despite advocacy of people like McMaster's and others in the National Security Council that were advocating that they're largely in compliance with them. We removed ourselves universal. Like if this evidence was there and this case was being made, the JCPOA had a diplomatic solution in which you could bring that evidence first to kind of a corporate board within the JCPOA and then up to the Security Council to show that they were in violation, and the United States did not opt to show that evidence and show they were in violation.
I do not see how your response is directly correlated to the comment I made. I'm not arguing right now whether it was the correct thing to tear up the JCPOA, and when there were other avenues that could have been taken, such as ensuring compliance based on what the JCPOA called for when you find that they're out of compliance. And I cannot speak, and neither can you, for the decisions of the Biden or Trump administrations when these things came to light. But I think it's irrefutable that regardless of whether the response was the proper or the best to the situation, they violated the JCPOA. You can't say that they didn't.
I can, because what I'm saying is the Trump administration had an opportunity within the JCPOA framework to bring up any disputes like this, and they did not. What they did is...
So you're denying the facts as I presented them? I presented false information?
I'm not denying the facts. I'm just pointing
Well,
out
the facts that I presented are that the Iranians violated the JCPOA.
I'm just pointing out the obvious fact and the historical fact of the way that the Trump administration withdrew, even though there were structures within the JCPOA to essentially put Iran into non-compliance with the JCPOA, which they did not use because, frankly, I don't think the facts you stated are as slam dunk as you think they are. But that's...
Well, they are slam dunk because it's true what I just said. And so you can argue, and it's a fair argument to make, that the response of the Trump administration was the inappropriate response, especially when there was a resolution process that was built into the agreement. That's not what I said. I didn't even address that. I just said that they were not in compliance, and they've never been in compliance. And then you argue something that's related, but it's not directly responsive to the point that I made, and you say, aha, I proved your response inaccurate while telling me that what I said was accurate. That's really interesting how you did that, Brent. Very interesting. It was accurate, but then again, it wasn't. That's exactly what you said. Steve, followed by Agent.
Well, to kind of dovetail into that conversation, Gary, I think with any person, nation, or any group, the first thing you have to assess is what is their belief system and what is the motivation behind it. Now, when it comes to Iran, I think we have a pretty clear track record of what their motivation is. The destabilization of Lebanon and of Syria, the support for the Houthis in Yemen, and the continual perpetuation of chaos within the Middle East. And to think that someone that has this, and the belief system comes down to the 12th Mahdi, belief system within the Shiite religion. The belief and the motivation of people that constantly show you who they are and what they're willing to do should be informative as to how you can approach someone when dealing with them in a negotiation. And to pretend that for the last 40 years that we haven't tried to engage these people with reasonable offers to kind of mitigate this and try and tamp this down is asinine. There's been Republican, there's been Democratic presidents that's tried to wrestle with this problem to the point, and the further, as far as motivation, not only was they systematically improving their centrifuge technology for enrichment, as simultaneously they was working on advancing their ballistic missile capability. What was that one military base in the Indian Ocean? They almost hit us with a ballistic missile. It's like 2,000 or 3,000 miles. So we see a country that systematically cheats on negotiation. We see a country that is engaged in systematic destabilization of a region that's critically important to the world economy. If anyone wants to do a quick AI search and pose this question, what would occur to the Middle East and vis-a-vis the world economy if the Iranians would obtain a nuclear weapon and use them in the Middle East? And people say, well, nuclear weapons are a deterrent. Oh, really? They're a deterrent for someone that has a track record that they do of just complete debauchery in that region? No, this wouldn't be a deterrent weapon for the Iranians. It would be an offensive weapon. And you go and look at the cascading effects that this would have, not only on the Middle East, it could start a bloody regional war between numerous countries there, but it would have a cascading effect on the fragile economies of some of these nations around the world that could take it into bankruptcy. It could have a devastating effect on the world banking system as these nations started to fail. And eventually, this financial and geopolitical chaos would filter back to the United States. This is something that people don't want to acknowledge. This is the true scale and scope of the potential problem that these people are posing. And people are just, you want to talk semantics about a deal? Okay, go ahead. But you want to ignore who and what these people are. You want to ignore the 40 years of diplomatic efforts to try and talk reasonable to people that are unreasonable, that continue to spread death, chaos, and mayhem in a region. And then you want to ignore the potential cascading effects that if they would obtain this and they would use it, what it could do to the world economy. So these are all elements that people don't want to touch on, but this is not short term, but this is a long term reality of failing to deal with the people with a mindset and a motivation that the Iranian mullahs have, and the potential for not only the Middle East but for the world economy. So when you look at it realistically, what choices do you have here? This is a festering problem that's, if unanswered, will eventually have effects that's going to be detrimental. So what do? Hit them where you got to hit them, make life as bad as you can for them, and force them to their knees. Obviously, this is the only motivation they understand. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Steve. And you were referring to Diego Garcia. It's a joint U.S.-British military base island, highly restricted in the Indian Ocean. And there were concerns, and there are concerns about Iran's development of missile capabilities that can reach that far. Thank you, Steve. Agent, followed by Dave.
Yeah, hey, Gary. Well, as I mentioned before, I think, when you boil it all down, the business of the U.S. is going to war, and it could be the last one. This could be the end for at least the global empire. They may have to retreat back into simply a Western Hemisphere kind of empire. But yeah, I do think we're heading to boots on the ground. It's just simply inevitable with what who the Iranian regime is. It's fair to say that we've had a regime change already, but the next guys up weren't as cooperative as we hoped.
We didn't have a regime change. Regime change implicitly implies getting somebody that you want. We didn't get somebody we wanted.
Right. I think we got someone worse, and these are the real hardliners. And now, I don't see this really. I mean, there is just capitulating and going back and letting Israel try to sort this out for the next however long. But that's just going to kick the can down the road, because as things get crazy, U.S. will just be drawn back into it. So I don't know. It's not good. This is going to go on for a while until I think until Iran is completely neutralized in the sense of interfering with the rest of the world's economy. And they're pretty dug in. They're obviously very strategically located. So, we know where this is heading. We can kind of predict it. And I think whoever, you elect a Democrat or whatever, it's just kicking the can down the road. Because there's no one, you're not going to get a Mandami level of let's totally be as supportive as we can of the IRGC and the Iranian regime. That's just not going to happen in the U.S. You're going to get various flavors of half-assing things, delaying things, or actually be willing to confront things. But one way or another, it's going to have to be confronted. And I think the U.S. is the only power strong enough to do it in the region. So I don't know. I think that's how it's going to go. Or the U.S. empire is just going to.
So I will note Marshall's
war
distinction.
in the world as that happens.
Thank you, Agent. I would note Marshall's this distinction that Marshall made. There's a difference between a leadership change and a regime change. When Fidel Castro died, there was no regime change. In Cuba, there was a leadership change. There's a difference, and the distinction is an important one. Thank you, Agent. We'll go to Dave, followed by Tiger.
So, Gary, there are two surprises which the intelligence were not preparing Trump compared to the last 6 to 7 presidents, right? They all know what would happen if you attack Iran, and Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz since 47 years ago. So there were two surprises. The first surprise is President Trump was shocked because IRGC attacking the Gulf state. Okay. The second surprise is that it is a perfect storm. We have an El Nino, and this will cause not just heat dome, but potentially global famine. So Trump has to make decision. And 1 year from now, if famine happens, 1 year from now, the history would tell what Trump decision has made. When he was in Ankara, NATO, I think he already made the decision at 8th of July. And this is a scam. Never negotiate because they cannot be trusted. All the Democrats coming here saying, well, we can try this. Bullshit. This is someone who cannot be negotiated. So stop providing justification for alternative option of the failure of all the previous Democratic negotiator. Period. This one cannot be negotiated. So what is the positive outcome? The most important positive outcome is if the famine happens 1 year from now, we will see that Trump decisive action potentially save not just 100,000, could be millions of people in Iran. They will run out of water, they will run out of food, and this decisive action, opening up the Strait of Hormuz, would save millions of lives. Well, the time will tell. The other positive outcome is the Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, all this, they are fed up. Behind the scene, they say, please finish the job. And what is a positive outcome? Abrahamic Accord. And Saudi already, in exchange for nuclear civilian arrangement, Saudi will sign Abraham Accord. That would be a titanic shift in the Middle East peace. So any other excuse, like, petroleum, we don't want war, all these are enemy, adversary, indoctrinating, all this idea to prevent America from saving potentially millions of lives in Iran. And I heard what Alan said, totally agree. Everything has been decided. And 21st of July, when the Lebanon Jeswas was here, and he reiterated again the outcome. There will be more nations joining Abraham Accord. First time in history, peace will come. And then all the proxy will be dismantled, and then history will tell 1 year from now, prevented a famine that would potentially kill millions in Iran. I think that is the most important thing. Everything Alan said, I totally agree. Everything has been decided. It will be free of Hormuz, Plan A, and Kurd and Alawi has been attacking skirmish for the last 3 weeks. And they would come down from the Zagros mountain. Hopefully the bridge is not too far this time, not like the Second World War. They will come and meet the invasion coming from the east side of the Strait of Hormuz, and will permanently free Strait of Hormuz. If Plan B lucky, then will be liberation of Tehran. Everything has been planned. Israel has been planned. All the news, all the information will be leaking, just like what you say, Gary. They're all consistent. Positive outcome.
Oh boy, there are two things that you said that I'm having difficulty following your logic. And I'm presuming if I'm having difficulty, then probably other people are as well. So I want to try to suss out what you said. You made a point of criticizing the previous Democratic administrations for not holding Iran's feet to the fire. But I think that since the hostage crisis in Iran, there were at least two administrations, or there were two administrations that were Republican, and both of them had the name Bush. So why do you single out the Democrats for what you see as failed policy toward Iran, and you indemnify the Republicans?
I think basically Trump has the biggest ball to take the risk. The Republican may not see the risk so clearly as him, and most of the Democrats involved are negotiators for the nuclear arrangement, and they try to defend why they did not fail. So most of the argument is why they did not fail. All the Democrat advisors, they are doing is we did not fail, and so this is why I'm criticizing the Democrat side.
Seems to me that your argumentation is strictly partisan in nature with regard to that, but that's fine. You answer the question. The other thing that I find interesting is she said, this president is going to prove his worth because he's going to force the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. But wasn't it his actions that resulted in the closing of the Strait of Hormuz? It seems to me that you're suggesting that if I'm a volunteer firefighter and I set my neighbor's house on fire, and then I respond to the alarm and put that fire out to save my neighbors, I'm a hero. I'm not the perpetrator, I'm the hero. How can you credit the president for resolving a crisis that he created?
There are 50 over 1,000, as he claimed, died during the January uprising, and you have to decide whether you intervene or not to prevent 50,000, like what Alan said, probably have gone up to 130,000, but the official number came from Trump is 52,000, and it's not just U.S. Both.
Where are you pulling 100 and some odd thousand as your guesstimate?
It's Alan, the one who said that. But official number from Trump is 52,000. So February 28th, Israel and U.S. decided to intervene, and it's in response to knowing that this regime, they would not hesitate to double, triple, quadruple the number of people die. And,
but is that answering my question? I didn't ask you about the people who died and whether there ought to have been a response. I'm asking you a question based on something that you said. You said the president's going to get that Strait of Hormuz reopened, and he'll get the credit for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, and everybody will see a year from now that his strategy was a great strategy, but he wouldn't have needed to have a strategy of reopening the Strait of Hormuz or fighting to reopen the Strait of Hormuz if he hadn't taken actions that resulted in the strait being closed. Because remember, it's been pretty credibly reported that the intelligence community, which I think I also heard you malign, I think I heard you say, and correct me if I misinterpreted this, that the intelligence community misled the president. It's been pretty credibly reported that the intelligence community told him that if he took the action that he took, then the Iranian response would be to close the Strait of Hormuz, which is exactly what they did. So
you are right.
So I'm just asking you to respond to that. I'm not asking a global question about whether we should have gotten involved in this in the first place or not based on what was happening to the people of Iran. I'm just asking you to respond to something you said about the president will deserve credit a year from now for getting that Strait of Hormuz reopened.
Okay, to straight up, you are right. And the moment February 28th decision to attack, the president already knows Strait of Hormuz will close, and all the implication and so on and so on. The surprise is he did not expect Iran to attack other Muslim Gulf state country. That is the surprise number one.
No, our war game plan said they would. The United States War College and the United States Army War College, they both said they would.
Surprises. President Trump publicly expressed.
President Trump can publicly express surprise all he wants. They told him that because they've war gamed this for the last 40 years. In order to win, we had to assume 75% of Iran's equipment simply didn't work.
Isn't Marshall just like the biggest little like obnoxious bitch in his communication style?
So to move on to the second point, and
Yeah, exactly. Just ignore his ass.
It is El Nino. Nobody expect to come in the middle of this crisis, and many experts already know. Beside heat dome, we are talking about famine. So if famine really happened very badly, and the people can calculate how many people in Iran will suffer, then 1 year from now, the decisive action which President Trump may take in coming days to week would just save millions of lives.
Wow.
Okay, again, creating a problem, and I'm not saying that the action shouldn't have been taken. Creating a problem, and then coming in and resolving the problem that you created.
Shut up, Marshall!
I could do that all day.
That's what Gary does all day.
And I could break some equipment that's essential to our job, and everybody's going, "What's happened to the equipment? Oh my God, we need this!" And because I broke it, I know where the repair needs to be made. So I go there and I make the repair, and then suddenly, hey, Gary's the hero. He fixed the problem, but he created the problem. And I think that's pretty consistent in your argumentation, Dave.
Last try. The problem had been created 47 years ago when French led us.
No, it hadn't. Prior to Trump starting the war, the strait was navigable, meaning oil ships could go through it with no disruption. After Trump started the fight, oil ships could not go through it without disruption. There's before and there's after, and there's nothing in between. And you need to account for that because you're not.
The question is, if Trump don't go in February 28th, 1 year later, Iran has all the
point.
Right.
We've
right.
heard
It's not the point. Stick to the point.
Every 10 years for the last 30 years. We get some sort of intelligence that says that. Every 10 years for the last 30 years, oh my gosh, they're going to get a bomb. And every American president, because we war gamed this out, was smart enough to go, nah, that's not a really good idea.
No.
We probably shouldn't do that.
So here's the thing that I have a problem with, and I want to just go on the record here, and I thank you, Dave, for your contribution. I do. But I just want to point out, when I challenge a caller, it's not because I'm trying to argue against their basic point of view. I'm just trying to keep things as accurate as possible.
Oh, I see.
Maybe it's my training. This is what I do as an editor. What do we know? We report what we know, but we don't report what we don't know. And we certainly don't report things that are contrary to what we do know.
Oh.
And so the caller and a previous caller as well made statements that are factually inaccurate, and then backed up the factual inaccuracies by talking about something else that is related to the discussion, but not answering the question. This would never go in a court of law. As I point out, this is not a court of law.
This isn't a court of law. I thought this was a court of law.
I guess you're not obligated, as I point out in my opening salvo, to respond. But for me, and I think for Marshall, because he's the one that expresses his frustration, probably Alan and Steve and Scott and Abby as well, but they don't express it. We find it very frustrating when we ask about one thing and people answer another. The question was about the opening of the Strait of Hormuz after ignoring the intel that told him that it would be closed.
Can't even remember what the hell Dave was talking about anymore, can you?
And opening it, and a year from now,
That's
being
not
held
the
in a hearing
point.
for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And then the caller says, but if we hadn't done this,
But the caller said,
massacres would have been greater. I didn't ask about the massacres. I didn't make a point about whether we should or shouldn't go in.
Maybe you should,
to save
Gary.
the Iranian people.
Maybe you should.
That wasn't the context of the question. And that's why we get
Callers.
down in this back and forth, which, by the way, is frustrating to the people who are waiting in queue. They want to get back to the topic. So please try your level best, folks, to stay on the topic. If you're asked a question about A, don't talk about B. You don't have to answer the question, or, counter the question by expanding your point. That's fine, but don't bring in other things that are not related to the question that was asked. Both David and Brett did that today. And as a moderator, not because I agree or disagree with a person's position, I'm not arguing that Dave is wrong, that had we not done anything, the massacres would have been greater. I'm not arguing that. That wasn't the point. I hope everybody understands what I'm saying here. And in the interest of moving it along, we'll go to Tiger, followed by Emil.
Oh, wow, I already got a thumb down from Howard. Anyway, so if we look at the positions of both sides of this war, where's the biggest gulf in their negotiation process? No pun intended. The biggest gulf is that Iran insists that it needs to maintain the right to toll the passage of the ships through the Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, as a form of reparation to the war damages that is caused by the United States and the coalition. The United States will not allow Iran to do that because it is giving Iran too much leverage as an influence in the region. With that said, right, let's consider what are the options on the table. Does the United States actually have an option to go into a full-scale war against Iran? And my answer at this moment is no. So first of all, if we look at some evidence, in China we have somebody that's been tracking U.S. troop movement in the region, and the current deployment level in the region is about 10K U.S. troops, mostly on the west side of the theater, closer to Israel, in Syria, I think, which is far less than what is required for any landing operation in Iran. The estimated required number of troops for that would be somewhere around 100K. And if we're talking about a full-scale invasion with possible occupation afterwards, the estimate could go as much as 1 million troops in Iran. And the cost for an operation like that in the next 2 years will be somewhat, over $1 trillion in the next 2 years. And to consider that the current ordinance level of the United States to sustain a full-scale war is capping the time of depletion at about 6 months. In order for U.S. to actually engage in this full-scale war, it needs to ramp up production of all the ordinances in a very short amount of time, which takes a lot of money and basically will transition the U.S. economy into a wartime economy. I think a few days ago we talked about the difficulties of the United States to manufacture something as basic as 155 millimeter shells. That's not a realistic option, right? So what is the likely option? Because we know that probably the United States is not willing to let Iran take control of the Strait of Hormuz, which is the status quo right now. They have effective control over it because their projectiles can threaten passage of ships. And short of a complete toppling of the government or a capitulation on the negotiations, this is not going to change. So the only middle option that the United States have is, as the title suggests, to expand the war by striking more of the infrastructure and hoping that that is enough to bring Iran onto the negotiation table in a position of weakness so they will accept the United States terms. What are the likely targets that the United States can strike on Iran territory right now? The biggest port that Iran has is the port of Abbas. It has 5, roads leading to it, 5 highways, which the United States have already bombed 3 of them. But it has not completely disabled the logistics network. Other than that, this is second-hand information I got from a Chinese analysis. About 80 or 90% of the Iranian power generation relies on natural gas, which are mostly, harvested from the Karg Island, or actually sorted in the Karg Island, and transported to all the stations across the territory of Iran through this pipeline, going from Karg Island northward into Isfahan and so on. If the United States bomb this pipeline, it would disable about 80% of Iranian power generation. which is going to be a difficult thing for Iran. But our analysis suggests that this is not enough to stop Iran from having enough capacity to inflict real damage on U.S. assets in the network. Adding to that, this is actually civilian infrastructure. So what is the Iranian likely response to that? It will be the targeting of power generation and desalination plants across the region, most likely in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and neighboring countries. Because for it to actually hit Israel is a possibility, but the success rate will be lower. So what we're looking at potentially is the result of this middle option being a further escalation of oil prices, and we haven't even factored in the blockade of the Strait of Aden by Houthis, which will actually require more U.S. intervention in itself. It's going to cause massive inflation. We're probably looking at global economy having a huge tsunami of stoppages and shortages and possibly famines, like somebody else has already pointed out. It's not a very good outcome for anybody who is either involved in this war or not involved in this war. And if we examine the likely outcome, it actually does not give the United States a say in forcing Iran to not control the Strait of Hormuz. So, Gary, while I understand, right, people like the Jewish people or Iranians who want to have a different regime have a very strong interest in trying to get the United States into this option, or possibly even into the full-scale war, to everybody else, this is likely to be a losing option. So I really hope your propaganda does not succeed in the United States thing.
Well, you're doing great till the end. You had to bring in the Jews and propaganda. Don't do it again, Tiger, because I will not allow for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is the kind of rhetoric that puts Jewish people in danger, because the rhetoric is telling people that all the problems of the current situation are the fault of the Jews. Do not do it again, or you will be disallowed. That was disgusting.
Gotcha.
How can Jerry? How can a person say everybody is benefiting out of this if the United States and the Israel stay, but what kind of benefit they get? Just milking Iranian blood for nothing? What is this guy is talking about? But it is open, it's a free country. He has title to his opinion, but he can pack his opinion, and you know where he can.
Yeah, I just don't allow that kind of discourse here. He had a great analysis of the situation, pretty intellectual, very well spoken, and then he has to throw that nonsense in. And I'm going to call it out anytime I hear it, here or elsewhere, like I had to do on Facebook just before I came in here today, because I was complaining about anti-Semitic attacks in New York, and people came back at me about genocide. That's exactly the point. The people are using what they claim to be genocide, and they have the right to that opinion. I'm not so certain that I would say that what happened in Gaza meets the definition of genocide, but a lot of people think it does. Even if it did, what does that have to do with me walking down the street being subjected to harassment or worse because I'm Jewish? I have no control over what Israel does. Maybe I support them, but I have no control over it. So why are you attacking me? You're using this as an excuse, and that's exactly the kind of anti-Semitism that Tiger added. A lot of people probably didn't, Scott, even realize that that's what he was doing.
Of course. Yeah, it's interesting. The death toll in the war in Gaza, on the Gaza side, about 70,000 folks. Most estimates are saying, reasonable estimates. I'm not talking about like hardcore Zionists, ideologues, like
Please,
I mean,
please don't downplay the deaths of like 70,000 versus.
I'm not. 50,000. We're combatants.
Folks are
Is that not enough?
We have
Is
to
that
wait
not
your
enough
turn.
for you? Would you like to have more?
50,000.
You have to wait your
50
turn, Edward.
50,000 are combatants. So 20,000 non-combatants. Okay?
More than 200,000. More than 200.
So this is one of the lowest non-combatant death tolls. If those numbers are anywhere near accurate, in the history of urban asymmetrical warfare.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, this is.
Just excuse me 1 second. The rule in this room is everyone speaks one at a time. If you think you're sixth in line and what you have to say is more important than the people who have been waiting longer than you, you are wrong.
You are mistaken.
How much do I have to explain this to people? Both of those individuals sound like they speak English as their native language. And I believe that I have a relatively good proficiency in the English language, that my words are understood by all. It's a rule of the room. It's not about the position you're taking. It's the rule of the room. Do not do it or you will be disallowed. Scott, please continue.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that if these numbers are reasonable, but every reasonable estimate is around 70,000. But if 50,000 of those are combatants, this is one of the most non-combatant casualty mortality rate wars in the history of modern asymmetric war. Now, I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that every death is tragic, but that's not a genocide. Sorry, that's not a genocide. You could say it's brutal. You could say it's too asymmetrical. You could say it's too. It's not a genocide.
I have a feeling Armani and Fallujah felt worse on the casualty tree. I know that our troops started using Bangalore torpedoes from World War II, like take down buildings. Bangalore on the bottom and tank on the top. They shoot the second story, then Bangalore the first story. And they,
You're underwater a little bit there. Look, if it's a genocide, I gotta tell you, I'm very disappointed. And I'm saying this facetiously. Who genocides a population by distributing polio vaccines? Why would you do that if you're prosecuting a genocide? Who genocides a population by telling them, get out, we're about to attack? Believe me, if I wanted to kill off the Palestinians, I certainly wouldn't do that. I would just go in there and kill them off. Who does that? This is a blood libel, and it's not the topic of the room, but we've gone off track a little bit here, so I'll just say that I can list dozens of actual genocides. Nobody's out on the streets protesting that. You want to talk about Iran? How many people the regime in Iran deliberately killed?
That's not genocide. That's just the people, duh.
Right. Who's protesting that?
No one.
Aww. Well, why? Yeah, I know why. They're not Jewish.
Only Jews should be allowed to do genocide, Gary.
That's right. Only Jews can commit
Really,
genocide.
we're only.
Okay. Amir
I
followed
took care of him.
Amir followed by Legend. Now, I think he might have been saying that facetiously, though. I'm not so sure I think he was being sarcastic. I may be wrong. Amir followed by Legend.
Hi there, guys.
I have a quick question.
You have to wait your turn. Get it? How many times do I have to say it? You have to wait your turn. I'll say slower if I have to in the future. Amir.
Yeah, this is why I love coming here. I mean, some of the clubhouse rooms that I attend, they're like Roman public houses. I mean, this is why I love this. Please keep on this thing because you're doing a great job here, Gary. Just a couple of points. First of all, just to put things in perspective, what Israel, I mean, okay, it's a cliche to say every single person dies is really bad, which it is, it's terrible. But just to put things in perspective, what the number of people that have been killed in Gaza over 2 years, Islamic Republic managed to do it over 2 days. So let's just put things in perspective. If you want to complain about things, just do it in a more consistent way. I'm talking about the people who keep giving this thing about this narrative about Israel, but they tend to ignore all the countries that do. Whether it's
did they warn them before they killed them, Amir?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. These guys were just protesting. They just came out just to beg the very basics in life, the very basic human rights. And they were gunned down with machine gun. So where is this, this massive left propaganda? Where the fuck are they when that happens in Iran? So
And by the way, the populace of Israel is evenly divided over the current leadership. And people come out on the streets by the thousands, the tens of thousands, sometimes the hundreds of thousands to protest. And on almost a daily basis, there are ultra-Orthodox Jews tying up traffic because of massive demonstrations, because the law has changed that they are subjected to conscription just like the non-ultra-Orthodox Jews. They don't like it. And some people who have been imprisoned for failing to report when drafted. Just yesterday or the day before, they stormed the prison to try to free them. How many of them were shot and killed doing it? Do you know?
No.
Zero.
None.
Zero.
Absolutely.
Anyway, please continue, Amir.
So, on the topic then, I actually think the conflict will expand. No agreement is really on the horizon, Gary, until serious damage is done. That's how it seems to be. Serious damage to Iran's infrastructure, as unfortunate as it is. But that seems to be the pattern now. And I think, don't forget that the last sort of agreement or MOU that was signed, it was Iran who actually nullified it by hitting a ship. And they just basically, they tried to sort of justify that the ship shouldn't have gone that way, it should have gone this way. That was not part of the agreement. So Iran doesn't want an agreement, and that MOU was never going to last. And the thing is going to expand. There's no doubt about it. But the point here is, Gary, that Iran is actually delusional. And I say this because it actually thinks that it can defeat a superpower. You cannot, it's a basic rule. You cannot defeat a superpower. Just as Ukraine cannot defeat Russia, you cannot defeat China, for example. If Ukraine can do serious damage to Moscow, but it knows what will happen. It knows how Moscow will up the ante. It could even use tactical on it. If it goes too far, if it starts hitting Moscow and kills thousands of people, that's what's going to happen. And this is exactly the same scenario here. If you hit a ship, we hit a bridge. You hit another ship, we hit a power station, power plant. And we just keep upping the ante. That's the nature. Effectively, this is, to some extent, it is Harry Truman doctrine, isn't it? Surrender, then we'll support you. And I think that's what we're saying here. And this is going to continue. And in terms of, Scott referred to it as, initially people saw this a walk in the park. Well, okay, I mean, let's say the initial miscalculation was a complete fuck up. I mean, let's say that. But listen, you cannot, Scott, this thing here, we are where we are. This cannot be, shall we say, unfuckable, This is not unfuckable now. This is like getting a fish out of a fish soup. You're down the road now. The can of worms is open. You got to deal with it. Forget about, the initial condition, how it was. It is the way that it's panned out that needs to be dealt with. And one of the major flaws in Tiger's argument is that it doesn't really consider the consequences of Iran becoming a regional superpower. Iran becomes a regional superpower. You can forget about your petrodollar. And you know what that will do to the economy in the US? Because if that goes, if the vacuum is filled by China, then if the Saudis and the 6 Gulf countries cannot, will be forced not to sell and get dollars for their oil, just like what in Libya, what was the guy's name, was trying to do. Gaddafi, he was trying to do that. He was trying to move away from that, and we all know what happened to him. And this is so critical, because if that happens, then a lot of the countries are going to dump dollar, including China, which it's got, I don't know, $700-800 billion worth of dollars. And these debts are going to be called upon. Now, we all know what percentage of the GDP in the US is just paid for the interest of the borrowing of 30 whatever trillion dollars debt. Without the petrodollar, the dollar is going to collapse. There is no way that the US is going to allow that. So forget about this idea that Iran could become a regional superpower, because the consequences of that are unimaginable in terms of just the economy for the US. And I'm not just scaremongering here. I mean, you can just ask the experts on this. What would happen if the petrodollar was compromised? So one other thing that I just like to make, and that is, that's what you made a comment about this, Gary. I don't know really why anybody would think that Trump didn't know about the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, Iran has been talking about that for decades, officially threatening to do this. So this was the first obvious thing that they would do. I mean, just imagine, just laying mines to close the strait is not at all difficult. You can use simple vessels like a fishing boat to lay mines, and they had already threatened it. So I can't accept that Trump did not know that that was going to happen. How he's going to deal with it is what we're going to have to see. But I'm betting you he will up the ante every time. This is Truman's doctrine, and it will continue. And I just hope it doesn't get to what Harry Truman had to do. I just hope that it doesn't get there, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Amir, I'm going to organize a protest. I want you to come and join me, or organize one in your community to free the Masalit people in Sudan. Free the Masalit. Now, of course, if there are genocides going on in this world, we know about them and we're out protesting. So I don't need to tell people what's happening to the Masalit people in the Darfur region of Sudan. I'm sure everybody knows about this, where there's widespread ethnic massacres, there are mass graves, and systematic sexual violence. Documented. Not in Gaza, by the way. Sudan. Free the Masalit. Are you going to join me, Amir? I'm sure we could get hundreds of thousands of people on the college campuses to come out and march for those people who are being massacred in a real genocide in Sudan. I'm sure we could do it, Amir. I'm sure there's an appetite to do that.
Only if you can get Mandani on board.
Yeah. Of all people, right? Mamdani, why aren't you fighting for the people of Sudan? Legend, followed by Philip. Legend.
Legend.
Philip,
Legend.
Philip followed by Andrew.
Here I
There
am.
you are.
I'm
Legend.
here.
No, he's here.
I'm here. All right, so the topic threatens to expand war and oil prices soar. What benefit, if at all, and this is more of a question, does the combining of a military with a foreign power, how does that help? And I mean that as a genuine question. I'm not trolling on
We're not talking about that, though.
But I'm saying it.
No. You're bringing your topic into a group that already has the topic. So could you do us a favor? We would really love to have you, but you need to address the topic at hand and not the topic you wish we talked about.
Okay, and if you had to just let me finish, I wanted to say
No, I'm not going to let you finish. You need to, you need to stick on topic. You're either going to say something about the topic or you're going to be moved down, one of the two. Like, figure it out really quickly.
So you mean oil prices? Don't talk about the oil prices at all?
Sure, talk about the oil prices. Talk about how they're getting more expensive, man. Go ahead. Talk about how they're getting more expensive. Go ahead.
I was just trying to figure it out. I didn't think I was going to get off topic, but I think you may have a better understanding about what I was going to say, I guess. I'm not trying to troll or anything like that, if that's what you think my intent is at all. I'm really asked a genuine question. It's like, how does that help us as far as gas prices?
Again, but that's not.
I didn't even finish.
You need to confine yourself.
Sorry, I was trying to tie it into it.
We're not trying to tie your topic into our topic. We have.
No, that's not my topic. I'm talking about gas prices. I was trying to say gas prices. I was trying to say gas prices. I'm just saying, what benefit does it help? Like, I'm trying to get an understanding.
Are we talking about the fast benefit or in long-term benefit?
Yes, I'm talking about the long term because the fast. Well, actually, no, the fast benefit because right now, what's affecting us right now at the pumps is what I'm concerned with. Because the price of the barrels of oil fluctuates or goes up during wartime, right? And then we have to rely on, I don't think we ever even touch our reserves yet. Not that I understand that we do. If we're not, I don't think we haven't touched our reserves. We're just really relying on the export.
We've touched our reserves. We've depleted them to like 60% of what they are.
See, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And then to combine ourselves as well as get into a war, I don't see any. Like it's just going to get worse. I don't understand. I really am trying to wrap my mind around the concept of what's happening around the world and how that is going to help us of course, in the short term, but as well as in the long term too. How do we come out of this? And what do we get from all the actions that are happening on a major scale?
Well, let me ask you this. What would happen if United States and Israel back up and we go back seat on our seat? Don't you think Iran is going to take advantage of this thing? And what is the guarantee? Every ship doesn't pass that until they pay tremendous amount of money, and it's going to affect you. For you, your children, your grandchildren, for the rest of their life, hit in the pocket and the palm. Because that's what they're going to do. If they win this, forget about you going and buying $2, $3 gas for the rest of your life and our children. I'm worried about my grandchildren. They have to go to the pump. Iran is going to do. If they win this, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be shut down for the rest of our life. That's what I guarantee.
Well, with that being said, then, and I agree with you on that. With that being said, I don't think we have any other choice but to ignore the pumps and go to solar. That's the only other solution. If not, then we'll just be staring at cars in our driveways and cars on the side of the roads and plants
So
that
you're
don't have.
you're thinking renewables.
Yes, it has to be. I mean, what other option?
I don't disagree with you. Renewables seem like a great option. Texas gets 35% of our power from wind farms. So, like, I totally agree with you. Let's do it.
Well, Marshall, it's not just that. The generator is going to generate the electricity to run my EV car. Need to work either with the diesel or gasoline. Come on.
No, it does. I'm just saying you can like help substitute part of where you get your power. But
I know. You are.
It was a Rick Perry thing. He was real big on windmills.
Yeah. At the same time, we're building these AI data centers that suck up communities' electricity. So I don't know whether we are properly sussing out our resources as they should. Thank you, Legend. I think actually in the aggregate that was a good call. Myanmar, or Burma if you prefer, since 2017, there has been a genocide deliberately targeting thousands of Muslims who are a minority there.
The Rohingya.
Right, the Rohingya Muslims, and forcing nearly 1 million to leave the country. Targeted killings. That's a real genocide. Thank you, Legend. We go to Philip, followed by Andrew.
Gary, don't forget about the Christian genocide in Nigeria. But I think progressives don't get incensed because it's Christians. Yeah.
I'm going to get to China in a minute too. I hope Tiger is still here, since he was so quick to talk about Israeli and Jewish propaganda. Philip, followed by Andrew.
Thank you, and hi, Gary and everybody. Yeah, your room tonight for me is a real roller coaster ride, and you know, I agree with Legend. You know, this war is having a massive impact on energy prices, which translates to food prices all over the planet, and there's money being taken out of already poor people's livelihoods exactly due to this. I think I hope the war does not escalate. I think even if you take out the Iranian regime, it's so fractured and it's so easy for even a small splinter group to close the Strait of Hormuz. So it's not easy to keep that open if you don't have a kind of a united people. And I don't think you're going to achieve anything through violence, because violence begets violence. And it's not only violence in terms of bombs raining down, it's violence in terms of the way that some people portray others as the scum of the earth, you know. That's
So
not.
how do we prevent the violence, Philip?
Well, as Pope Leo had just recently again said, we have to denuclearize in terms of military weapons. Not only Iran, the globe. There should be global denuclearization.
So we have to be Eisenhower and Reagan all at the same time. Atoms for peace and total denuclearization.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Who's using nuclear weapons at the moment? And I mean, earlier somebody talked about Russia having all the power and now nobody can defeat the superpower. I don't think that's completely true. I'm sure Putin 4 years ago didn't think that bombs or drones or missiles are going to be raining down on the infrastructure around Moscow.
Right, but drones are not nuclear weapons.
No.
So nobody has been using, thank God, nuclear weapons. So my question was not how do we prevent an escalation from conventional
weaponry to unconventional weaponry. My question to you was, how do we stop the violence?
If we've tried negotiating in the past and we've tried again and again, and if we fail, we have to try again. We have to try and negotiate peaceful solutions to this war on all sides. And again, that involves developing some kind of compassion, which many people, even in this room, does not seem to be able to do. And then just before
Sorry, let me ask you something real quick. What about a Chamberlain moment? Where your intention is peace, but their intention is disruption and war. And you ignore it to your own detriment. What about that? How do you prevent that? How do you prevent that from happening?
Well, I live in South Africa. I'm a white guy in a rural area on a farm.
Hey man, you're talking to another white guy in another rural area on another farm. You are 100% good. Don't you even worry.
I am working towards, peace. I'm collaborating with all of our neighbors in this area to work on peaceful solutions, and we're collaborating on stuff. That does not mean that I am not willing to protect myself and my family in my own home. If somebody invades my own home, then definitely they are in trouble. I think we need a new book of rules. We are living at different times than 2,000 years ago. And those rules need to be able to enforce.
So be strong where necessary and peaceful where always applicable.
Exactly, and always
in every situation.
Negotiate.
All right, Philip, if you want to sit down on the table and negotiate with me, and I'm planning to kill you, how can you negotiate with me?
Well, I'll try and sit around the table where you are not able to kill me. Maybe I won't even negotiate with you yourself. And I mean, that's of course the problem.
Yeah, so that falls
because
back
who
on
do you
this.
negotiate with,
Yeah,
and then the last thing that I want to say is that not everybody in Iran are terrible people wanting total destruction and annihilation. Most people just want to live in peace. And if one can get, enough of those people to not to stand up against the regime and be killed in their thousands. But of course, that's why it's a difficult situation. People are fundamentalists religiously, and of course that's part of the problem. So changing that has to also be part of the solution. We need a new book of rules that's appropriate for these times.
Well, when you write that book, send me a copy and I'll review it for you. Because I don't think anybody's come up with a new book of rules when it comes to dealing with a fundamentalist regime like the Iranian regime. I think you're absolutely right. We're not talking about the people of Iran. We're talking about the regime. Ethiopia. They've used forced starvation in the Tigray region, mass ethnic-based detentions, conflict-related sexual violence against civilians. Ethiopia. Where's the outrage? Where are the marches? No Jews, no news. Ann, followed by Stan. I'm sorry, Ann. Andrew, followed by Ann.
Thanks, Gary. I thought maybe you were getting in line with Mr. Trump and boycotting my hockey sticks here.
We never do that.
Yeah, right. Just tariff them 50%, whatever. Yeah, I think this is a very difficult situation for the United States. I'm not entirely sure that without boots on the ground that they can be successful. However, I think $1.5 trillion plus 69 billion was just put through the House of Representatives going to the Senate for approval. So I think that will go a long way to extend the money, but again, I think it comes down to the lack of ordinance and the depletion of the ordnance. I think that's what Iran is banking on, that there'll be such a depletion, unless it's just a massive bombardment right now. But without boots on the ground, I really don't see this evolving to a satisfactory end. It's totally, unfortunately, it's a quagmire. It's a difficult position to be in. And you're backed into a corner almost, because if you retreat now, how are you going, the straits are still closed. And if you don't have total control of that country, then you're going to have to maintain some kind of escorting through the straits, because you can just pot shot through there. That's not a large area. And as long as you have a population willing to do that and has the material to do that, then, the United States, I think, is going to have to escort many of these vessels through. But it's pretty hard to do that when they're raining down with missiles right now. But yeah, I don't envy Donald Trump at this particular point in time. Will it escalate? Probably. Like I said, there's a lot of money now there. But for how long, that remains to be seen. So, yeah, good grief. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. China, and we've had the Prime Minister of Turkestan in exile on this show several times. The Uyghur and other Turkic minorities are subjected to genocide in China. There's a mass internment camp system for Muslims. There's forced labor. There's intrusive digital surveillance. Well, that's true about everyone who lives in China. There's state-mandated sterilization. State-mandated sterilization. The Israelis are missing the boat. If you sterilize everybody, then you can wipe out all the Palestinians without dropping a bomb. State-mandated sterilization aimed at eroding the group's cultural and demographic identity. We've documented it all right here. That's a genocide. None of the things that I've just mentioned, China, Burma, Ethiopia, Sudan, none of these things occurred in Gaza. Were there deaths? Yes, I'm not trying to minimize the deaths. I'm not trying to minimize that a lot of civilians were killed. But none of these other things, which are deliberate attempts to eliminate the existence of an ethnicity or a religion within a society, is what's going on in Gaza. And one can argue that the Israeli response to the constant attacks by Iran's proxies, and most notably at the October 7th attacks, was justified. I would not agree, but I wouldn't stop somebody from making that argument. But genocide, just because people keep saying genocide, 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 doesn't make it true. And again, even if it were true, what does that have to do? What does that have to do, even if it were true, with Jewish people living their life in the diaspora? What do they have to do with the decisions made by Israel? Since Iran, which we know is a terrorist state, which we know has caused the deaths since its inception of more than 1,000 American citizens, do we go and attack Iranian people? Do we go to Persian restaurants and smash out their windows?
No, of course not.
Well, why not?
Because it's the wrong thing to do, and the Jewish community simply doesn't act like that.
Exactly. So all the people who are responding to concerns about the attacks on the Jewish people by bringing up Netanyahu's name and screaming genocide can go to hell. And followed by Stan if there's time.
Yeah, you just answered my question, Gary. Thank you. It was just way back now. This is 2 minutes ago. What actually makes it, constitutes something as an actual genocide? But you just answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, there are arguments among scholars over whether that's a genocide in Gaza. I understand that. You can have that argument. But you're not going to attack me, my family, my friends, and people who I don't even know just because they're identifiably Jewish and get away with it on my watch. Stan, followed by Hassan if there's time.
So, as far as the situation with Iran, we have a problem, and if we look at facts, on the day before we attacked Iran, there was a agreement negotiated by Jared Kushner and Witkoff that solved the issue related to a potential nuclear threat, and we reneged on the deal. We went and attacked them, despite having they're negotiating in good faith, we negotiating in good faith. We then did an MOU, or well, I guess to predate that, the U.S. negotiated a agreement, and Obama negotiated agreement. Some people didn't like it. Trump ripped it up, and thus enabled the Iranians to enrich more nuclear matter. So we didn't follow that agreement. We did an MOU. We didn't follow the MOU.
We followed the MOU. Ron violated the MOU.
Okay, no. I'm not.
Yes, I absolutely did.
Okay, I'm presenting the facts. If we only have a finite amount of time here, if we look at what was at least presented in paper today, with Saudi Arabia, there was a deal done, and then the negotiator in chief decided to change the deal after the fact.
Right, but what does that have to do with this about the MOU?
It's very clear.
It's not, Stan. That's why we asked the question.
Okay, let me finish.
So Stan, I'm gonna because of the time stop you, and because Abby is late to the table, I have to give her an opportunity. But I just want to tell you, there are arguments to be made about who broke the MOU, and you don't know, and I don't know for sure 100%. But if you listen to what the United States says, Iran violated maritime rules vis-a-vis the Strait of Hormuz in violation of the MOU by trying to exert the control over the strait after it was reopened. That was them breaking the MOU.
It's all about reparations. It's about reparations.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they were right or wrong to seek reparations. The point you made was that it was the United States that broke the MOU.
Yes.
Where? That's not the United States breaking the MOU.
The Iranians attacked a ship, and we responded backward. The aggressive attack by the Iranians is the provocation and the violation of the MOU as it stood.
The only argument that
that's the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the AP and Reuters.
So guys, stop for a second. It's 6:58. Listen. The only argument the Iranians have been making vis-a-vis the violation of the MOU involved a sovereign nation that was not a party to the MOU and their actions in Lebanon against a terrorist group in Lebanon that was attacking their nation. That's their argument.
There's many more arguments.
That was their argument, Stan. That was their argument, Stan. Abby, you've got a minute and a half.
I'm just gonna quickly, I came up because I wanted to segue when you were talking about the uh, accusation of genocide and what is happening with dragging Jewish people in the United States into this. That I don't know if you talked about this in the room, but there was a stabbing on Upper East Side today. This is a day after Mandani has decided to share his blood libel of a Jewish man going to synagogue. So I just came up to share that. If you haven't talked about that yet, but it highlights exactly what you just said, Gary, that there is ramifications for spreading blood libels, and we saw it 24 hours after Mandani spoke.
Okay, so I was aware of the stabbing, but I wasn't aware of the circumstances surrounding it. But here's what the reporting says. A Jewish man was stabbed Thursday afternoon on Manhattan's Upper West Side along with one other victim in what was potentially a hate crime. Commissioner Tisch writes that the suspect yelled Allah Akbar during both attacks. Genocide. Great. Start protecting 1.3 million Jews who live in New York City. Mamdani, you were elected to protect everyone in your city. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time. So till 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
doing better than us. But I think that there's also, groups that do better than us that's also like genetic in origin.